right, everybody. Welcome to Gravitational Pull. It's good to have you guys back. We're veterans at this point. Episode 2. Crazy good times going on. I know that Kevin, you just got back from the golf course, so tell us a little bit about your experience today. How'd you shoot?
I don't want to give a number because it wasn't great. It wasn't great. We only played 9 holes. Wasn't the best. I'm not gonna lie, but you know what? I was out there. It was a warm day with 2 great guys. Had a good time. So it was fun. It was fun. So
a true case where bad golf beats no golf.
I mean, it wasn't that bad.
Okay.
I mean, like I wasn't in the hundreds or anything, but yeah. I mean, if I was in the hundreds, I don't think I'd be smiling during this podcast at all. But yeah, I mean, I did okay.
Because if you were in the hundreds, that would indicate that you're playing Eric Dahl golf, and I know that's not where you live.
That's not where I want to be either.
Fortunately
I don't ever
for
want to
you.
be.
So
yeah.
Well, good. Lots of things moving and shaking here in the Gravitate universe, but excited for today's topic, which is how to spike creativity. And, when you think about creativity, I think that it's one of those overarching themes, and especially within marketing. But, in my heart of hearts, I have to believe that everybody is a creative to some degree. But the question is how well do they embrace it? How well do they want to jump into the creative element and really produce their own contributions and ideas? So
sure.
Here's my question for you, Kevin, is when I say the word creativity, what comes to mind? And, within your experience through your career, give me some ideas about creativity on a personal level from your side that you feel like have been of note.
Well, and I think you made a couple good, I thought were good statements where everyone has some creativity in them, right? And I think the difference is I think when we think of creativity, we think of, hey, could you write a song or think up a story, or you can write or think up for us, it's, think up a tagline or an ad or, things of that nature. But I think I'm not the most creative person in regards to those things in the office. I tend to defer to you or Phil, who's in charge of our creativity, or Gardner, who's our content writer. I should restate that. Phil, who's our head of design. And so, yeah, I tend to defer to people like that for you guys to do those things. But when it comes to, but circling back to what you said before, I tend to find creativity in the overall business structure, or how do we solve this problem, or what do we do over in this scenario? So to your point, creativity is a number of different things. I don't necessarily consider myself an extremely creative person by the general definition, but everyone has a way of thinking up new strategies, new ideas, thinking up, whatever it might be. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I look at it is, we all have different ideas, different, whether it's a strategy or a ad campaign or whatever it might be.
And I have to disagree with you because I feel like you're a very creative person, and I'm not saying this to, stroke the ego or anything of that nature, but I know that there's been calls where we've talked about business strategy and I've needed creativity that I can't provide. So we talk about, strengths and I think that what you're referring to is, artistic creativity. But I feel like you have an incredible ability to look at it from the business side and to bring a creative approach. And I know that we just had that with one of our newer clients where I told you, it's like I'm having, I'm hitting a wall, hitting brain cloud after brain cloud, and told you, look, I need your help on how to structure this account. And you stepped up to the plate and hit a home run. And so that creativity, I think, was profound. But there's an old saying that says, create with the heart and build with the mind. And in this instance, I feel like you were creating from the heart because it's who you are. It's natural to who you are. You talk about business structures, you talk about partnerships and those types of things. Your creativity was on point there. And so there's just different types of creativity.
And I agree that there's different types of creativity. Obviously, when I think of a creative person, I tend to look towards more you, where I'm like, I don't know what the line should be on this ad, but I'll defer to Eric on those things. So I guess that's just, yin and yang. I guess it all works out, right?
There's balance. So, I remember, and creativity is one of those things where, in business, you hear the phrase, think outside the box. You got to think outside the box. You got to come up with something original and something beautiful.
Which is the most uncreative. Like, the phrase itself is now in the box. Like, it's the most cliche phrase in the world.
Cliche. I throw using the word robust, I think is cliche within the business world. And so
that's right.
Thinking outside of the box, very much so. But when people say you got to think outside of the box, and it's almost like there's a proverbial gun that's put to your head at that point where it's like, you have to be creative now. And it causes a lot of anxiety, at least for me, where, if I'm put into that scenario, I feel confident in my capability to come up with new ideas and to be creative. But if the expectation is to get it done right now, that adds an element of stress to it. But, I remember, gosh, this has been like 20 years ago. I remember walking in and getting my hair cut. And this was before cell phones were being utilized and before you could get the internet on your cell phone. And so you'd walk into the barber shop and sit down in the lobby, and they'd have their, groups of magazines on the table. I remember picking up a business magazine, and it was like a Q&A session with some expert. And one of the questions that was posed to this expert was something along the lines of, if I'm sitting in a very boring business meeting, how do I stay engaged? How do I contribute? How do I, provide some sort of value? And the answer was short, but it was profound enough to where, again, 20 years later, I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can remember this article. And the answer was, if you go into that meeting and throughout the meeting, you're asking yourself this question ongoing, which is, how can I make this meeting better? That to me is an ongoing exercise in thinking outside of the box that pays dividends. It allows you to kind of take the stress away and remain engaged, even if it is a boring meeting, to how your creativity can provide value in those scenarios. And so it's not a huge, it's nothing that is monumental, but it does have tremendous value.
Well, I think in addition to that, in thinking about today's topic, I thought about the different work environments that I had, where when was I able to be creative, think of new ideas, think of new ways of accomplishing things or doing things. And I think it boils down to two different things. Number one is, are you rewarded for creativity, right? So I always think there's always a better way of doing things. There's always a better process. And I had some, which a lot of bosses don't like. A lot of employers are like, just shut up, sit down, do what I tell you to do. I've already thought about this. But if you don't reward somebody for the creativity, like encouraging it, like, we want to hear new ideas. When you bring a new idea to me, I want to hear about it and I want to reward it. And I think, in those meetings, those boring meetings, I think a lot of times we just think, man, they obviously, if they rewarded or liked creativity and creative thought, this meeting wouldn't be so boring. But to your point, it's up to us to add that in there, add the new ideas, and bring those to the forefront. But I can't overemphasize the fact that in an organization, you have to reward and encourage creativity. And if you don't, you're just going to get the same old thing over and over and over again. Now, how to do that, how to cultivate that, that's a whole nother another topic, I've got a couple suggestions here, but it's easier said than done.
It is easier said than done. Requires effort, no matter how you slice it. But before
Yeah.
we get into, I want to get to your points, but I want to come back to that
Sure.
and ask you a question. My question to you, and I'll give you my answer momentarily, but where do you feel like you receive your best ideas? Is there something within your routine? Is there a certain place? I mean, how do you get dialed in and open yourself up to creativity and your best ideas? What does that look like, if there's any sort of format to that?
So there's three scenarios that I get my best ideas, my aha moments. So the first one is when I'm getting ready in the morning. I have a little process that I go through. I don't think we need to talk about it during this podcast, but I have a unique process in which I get ready in the morning, and I spend a lot of time thinking in that process. So that's number one. Number two, when I love being in my car by myself, because I think I have all the time in the world just to think and think of new ideas and new strategies. So the car, like in the car, just driving down the road, and I've actually had scenarios where unsafe driving, do not promote this, but I was like trying to take notes and doing like voice to text because I was reading a book and I was getting all these ideas, and I still have those notes, and they're funny because they make no sense. Like if you were just to read them, but when I put them in there, I knew what they meant. So, and the third thing is when I'm in my office, I lock the door, and I turn on, as weird as this is, I turn on classical music very loud, and I stare at the dry erase board, behind me over here, and I just stare at it and just start thinking of new ideas and what's a problem we were running into, or what's a impediment to growth, and then I think of things and I start drawing things on the board and stand back and make lists and make goals, and that's how I do it. Those are my three things. I guess the fourth thing is when I mow the lawn.
Yeah,
I like to think when I'm mowing the lawn.
I actually, yeah, I dig that. I was talking to my middle daughter about listening to classical music just yesterday and how it promotes ideas and things. And but I love what you said about your routine and reading books and sitting in front of the whiteboard. I'll tell you mine, but full disclosure, we're going into humble brag territory, Kevin. So
okay, here we go. So I know the first place is going to be.
Yeah, you already know, but and I've actually read up on this. So in 2014, Stanford showed a study that said that exercise improves divergent thinking, which is original ideas, divergent thinking, in those who exercise regularly. And so, I joke about the humble brag. Within the office here at Gravitate, we talk about humble bragging anytime you slightly reference going to the gym. And so I do. I feel like I have my best ideas in the gym. But even a year ago, I'm thinking back a year ago when they closed down the gyms for COVID, and I did a ton of hiking, and I did that regularly. And I had so many ideas on the trails that were amazing. It was like a steady download session of ideas and creativity that half of them I knew I wouldn't be able to remember. I'd pull out my phone and do the voice transcriber and try to remember as much as I could. But when I'm engaged in some sort of an activity, exercise-wise, where the blood is flowing, like I'm getting a steady dose of ideas. But like you say, beyond that, taking a bath, reading, exercising, I mean, whatever the case is, if you get out and do something.
Are you a bath man? You like taking baths?
No.
Oh, okay. You threw it out there. I was wondering.
I know there are people who like to take baths. I have not enjoyed taking baths since I was probably 10 years old.
Well, you're missing out. You're missing out. They're wonderful.
I hope your bathtub is very large to where you can straighten your legs, because that's never been a luxury for me.
Well, it's the depth, Eric.
Okay.
It's the depth. How deep is the tub?
So here's another question for you, Kevin. Are you a night owl or are you a morning person?
So I'm such a night owl, and I am not a morning person. Like my nights start when it's like 10 o'clock, 10:30. I'm like, oh, good, I got 3 hours to do whatever I want. Like I'm totally a night owl. I get it from my mom. I don't need a ton of sleep. 6 hours tops, and I'm set for the day. I just don't need a lot. So yeah, I'm a huge night owl. I always joke with my wife because when we first got married, I said, okay, are you a night owl? Are you a night person or a morning person? And she's like, I'm neither. I'm like, well, you got to choose. And I would just want to be honest with you. You probably should go with night owl because that's what I am. So she's still not really either, but
Okay.
I love her. I love her. I love her even more because of it.
Sure. Well, and it's funny because you get that from your mom. I got the same thing from my mom, but once again, it's yin and yang where we're balancing each other out. And you've seen this, Kevin. Like, I come in guns blazing most days, but when we have those meetings that are 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the evening,
Yeah.
it's like I become worthless, and my mind feels like it's going like 5 miles an hour. And if I don't get my 8 hours of sleep every night, I'm not the same person, unfortunately. So,
Yeah.
it's all about the routines and respecting the routines and understanding how your body and how your mind works. But I think that's a key component of spiking the creativity is understanding how you function. So you mentioned a couple of ideas, and I'm all ears. I want to know about those.
Well, I thought about what do you need to do in an organization to kind of encourage and stimulate creativity. So I have 3 things. 2 of them are kind of the same, but the first thing is time. So if you come into work and you have all day long, nonstop, you are just like, I have to go because my schedule is so jam-packed. There's no way you're going to have any time to have any creativity. So having time and is I think is a big deal. Some free time, go sit on a couch, go take a nap. We have a massage chair here, which, just time. In addition to that, I kind of talked about it earlier, but just the freedom to be able to do it. Like you are able to just sit and think and be creative and bring those ideas to people and just to have the freedom to be creative. So it's kind of, time and freedom are kind of hand in hand, but I think they're a little bit different. Obviously, like I said earlier, you got to reward and encourage creativity when people bring things to you. Don't just say, okay, thanks. Yeah. I don't really care. You got to, encourage them, ask questions and implement some of these things that they come to you. The last thing is that you got to have, for people that work in an organization, you got to have a buy-in to what they're doing, what the whole group's doing. Because if you don't really care, why would you spend the time and energy in your spare time and the freedom that you do have? Why don't you just do it doing something else? So having buy-in to the end, the goal for the whole group, I think just spurs on. You put those 4 things together, and I think that I think you have a creativity. I'm sure there's other ideas as well, but those are the 4 things that I came up with, and the scenarios that I've been able to be as creative as I can. I had to have all 4 of those scenarios.
I love that. And, that last point that you made where that buy-in is such an important element. And obviously, Kevin knows this, but here at Gravitate, we have our book club. And the first book that we read together as a team was the Five Dysfunctions of a Team. Was that the name of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was one of the key one of the key topics that I walked away from that book is if the company and if the staff is bought in, it builds that team unity, but it also builds kind of a confidence. And I've always felt that with creativity, we've talked about balance. I also feel like there's a balance between creativity and confidence, where the more you double up on creativity, the more confidence you get. The more confidence you get, the more creative you get, and it's just this ongoing circle of productivity and success ultimately that feeds off of one another. And it's not easy to get into that. I wanted to read a quote by Seth Godin, who great marketer, teaches a lot of great principles, but something that he said in his book, Tribes, We Need You to Lead Us, has resonated with me. And it's a quote that I refer back to quite a bit. And he says, it's uncomfortable to stand up in front of strangers. It's uncomfortable to propose an idea that might fail. It's uncomfortable to challenge the status quo, and it's uncomfortable to resist the urge to settle. But, he says, when you identify the discomfort, you found the place where a leader is needed. And so it is. It's hard to get up there and propose a new idea. It's hard to, be the one who says, hey, I've got this new strategy or this new idea, because you don't know how it's going to be received. But if you have a vision and you can make sure that others understand that vision, you're kind of entering into the Don Draper realm of Mad Men, where he would get up and present this idea in such a convincing fashion that everybody would be bought in. And then there's that confidence and creativity that circle starts to move, and we're off and running. And so I completely agree with that on the buy-in. I just want to communicate that, again, we're all creatives at heart, whether we believe that or not, and in what categories, that may be, or maybe not in some categories, but it's just an action component. You just need to act on that creativity, because I think that's where you're going to find that you can grease the wheels and have some amazing experiences by being bold.
I think, and I think what you said there, it made me think of something else that I think is really important. Is as managers or leaders or whatever terminology you want to use, sometimes you have to be critical, so to speak, of the creativity, right? And I think it's a talent or a skill or something that everyone needs to learn, to have an immense amount of tact when someone brings an idea to you, or whether it's a design or whether it's and be very careful to not, what do we call it, squash the chicken or something. I don't know why that's coming to mind.
Yeah.
We're like, it's just cultivating, and my old business partner Todd Jensen used to say, don't squash the, I think that's the line. But I knew what he meant, which is, a lot of ideas don't come fully developed, and so you don't want to squash it before it's developed. Mm-hmm. I think that was the premise.
Gotcha.
If he has, if he's really bored and listening to this, he's probably pulling out his hair, thinking, Kevin, that is not what but I think that's what the concept was. Here's my point. The term I always use, because people bring, ideas to me, right? And I used to say to my a really good friend of mine that used to work here named Andy Sorter, he used to bring things to me for my buy-in. And, number one, Andy's creativity, genius, like Phil's, far superior to anything I have, right? They're over there creating things, and they have to humble themselves and bring it to me and be like, hey, what do you think? And it's like, I don't have a degree in design. They do. They've gone to 4 years of school, yet here I am with a business degree saying, oh, I think you should do this. Anyways, point is, sometimes they don't have all the data. Sometimes it's not going to work with exactly what we think. And sometimes, they miss the mark. What I always say to them is, listen, I understand that I don't create anything, and creating is the hard part. And those of us that critique your creativity, that's the easy part. And I always say, look, I don't create anything, but I'm a great critic. And so as long as you just, they know that you respect their creativity and their process and what they've brought, and just be careful to not squash the creativity, environment, or the creative, whatever you want to call it, just the
evolution.
Just make sure the confidence.
No, it makes perfect sense, because, just to double up on what you said, I always have said ideas never come fully formed. And so, Todd's saying it goes hand in hand with that. And you've got to be able to cultivate those ideas over time and understand that it's going to be an evolving process to really get an idea to where you're saying, okay, that's the end point. That's the stopping point. And it is a process. But, I've talked to a lot of people who, have been nervous about presenting their ideas because it's a topic that is kind of become more and more within business mainstream, which is the imposter syndrome. And people feel as though they may not have the talent, they may not have the ideas or the creativity in this case to where they are a true player, and they're worried that they're going to be exposed as a fake. But oddly enough, going back to that idea where ideas never come fully formed, yet we all have ideas. And I also believe there's a book called Steal Like an Artist that its overriding theme is that there are no original ideas. They all are an evolution. And so, once you understand that and accept that, the whole idea of being an imposter goes away because you're coming up with an idea, but then once you make it your own, it's yours. And that's the beautiful thing about creativity. And so, as creatives, whether depending on what kind of, job function you work in, you can be creative and take credit for it because you've taken an idea and you've made it your own. And there's no need to second guess yourself. There's enough of that going around anyway. But that imposter syndrome makes me laugh because, ultimately we're all imposters, but we all have ideas, and it's just a matter of showcasing our skills and our abilities. But yeah, original ideas don't exist. Now, I will say this. There are some times, and this is why I love watching Super Bowl commercials, because it's like a steady dose, not all the time, but it's like a steady dose of creativity that, those are the best of the best oftentimes. And so I love the commercials that I watch them and I have the thought, oh, I wish I would have thought of that. Because that's where I know, that's a great starting point for maybe something of my own down the road, where using that as inspiration, understanding that there are no original ideas, taking it but making it my own helps me to raise my own creativity game.
Yeah. On that same point, there's nothing enrages me when I see a commercial that's just garbage. And they did not spend even a slight amount of creativity to come up with those. So it's like like we've been saying, yin and yang. Those commercials that are just so good, you're just like, that is awesome. Good job. And the ones that are just garbage, you're just like, really?
Yeah.
We're just phoning it in today. We could do better than that. So
I feel the same way about billboards. I don't feel like I'm a guy who gets road rage, but I feel like I get more angry when I see a stupid billboard than I do when somebody cuts me off. I'm like, what a freaking waste of ad spend. You put up that you're the best in the country at this. You know what? Nobody cares. Like you say, put in some time and energy into coming up with a creative message. One of my daughters said, it must really make you mad. And I think they kind of were taking my temperature from across, the seat and seeing my anger boil over when they saw my reaction to some of these billboards. And one of them said, it must make you mad to see some of these billboards because some of them aren't very good. And, if my teenage daughters are pointing that out, yeah, they're onto something. So,
well, and on that same thing, there's some that I don't love, right? So, I'll point one out that I don't love. I think Thomas Arts came up with the idea for Ken Garff with the "We Hear You." Ken Garff Auto Group, we hear you. I don't like necessarily love the ad. Okay, I don't necessarily love the concept, but at least they thought up a strategy or a campaign, or they used some creative juices to think up something different than most auto dealers that are just like, hey, it's Easter, we're going to have an Easter sale this weekend. Yeah. So they've actually gone out of their way, thought of the creativity, be creative, think of something, and put forth the effort. So you got to reward creativity, reward effort, reward actually putting them through the time. Even though I don't necessarily love the concept, but again, I didn't think of it, and Ken Garff's not asking me to do the ad, so what's
funny is I've had the same thought on that particular campaign, and I feel like what's made it memorable, what's allowed for it to rise above what I call the fluff, is that they've been consistent with it. And so,
Yeah.
the fact that they've doubled down on it and said, look, we're going to run this idea for not a month or two, but for years, and then it kind of becomes a part of the brand itself, which I think has been effective in this case. Because I don't know that the original idea was anything that necessarily knocked my socks off, but they've taken it in 50 different directions, and that consistency component I do feel like was a creative approach, and in this case
Sure.
has done some good things for them. So
Sure.
Anyway, any final thoughts on creativity before our internet goes down again?
Yeah, seriously. My last thing is, I think I would say, number one, what you said earlier, everyone's creative. Everyone is creative in their own ways. And so I think that's important to understand. And quite frankly, I hadn't even thought about that till you brought it up during our little chit chat here today. But with that, respect other people's creativity. And what I mean by that is, obviously I can't, it would take me a very long time to design a really good looking website. And so when someone brings me a website that they've designed themselves, that they've done, respect other people's creativity, understand that it's not easy. And whether it's thinking up, writing a song or writing a script or painting a picture or whatever it might be, or figuring out a creative way to build something or figuring out a creative solution to a problem. At the end of the day, that's all creativity, and respect other people's creativity, because, we all like to be respected on things that we put out there.
Yeah. And it allows for growth rather than resentment,
Yeah.
And so, my final thought is just kind of along the lines of what you're saying, which is if you respect the process and you respect the players involved, it enables an environment where creativity can also shift into an additional gear, and best work can be realized. And so, as you look to embrace the creative role, whether that be within marketing, within HR, within accounting, whatever component of business that you're in, if you look to embrace ways to be creative, I think that you're going to be providing value to the business that is needed and always appreciated. So hopefully today some of these ideas that we've shared have been of value to you. I'm excited because moving forward, we're going to start to have some guests on the Gravitational Poll podcast, which will be a lot of fun. And so be on the lookout for that. We'll be back in another couple of weeks. But for now, there's a part of me that's going to die inside when I say this. But so here we go. You gotta hate the game and not the player. But if you feel like you've had some value provided to you today, if you'll like and subscribe. So I'm going to tell my teenage daughters that I dropped that line today at work, and they're going to laugh at me.
Subscribe down below.
Like and subscribe. All right. Thanks, everybody.